You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Brian Craig. Kathy not with me again today. Kathy is back in the hospital and will be staying for a few days. And she will be having some surgery on Monday. So when I get off the air on Monday, I'm heading straight to the hospital, and Kathy will be having surgery later in the day. And what had happened is she had a problem. She was in the hospital. They sent her home on Thursday and said she was all fixed up. So they sent her home on Thursday with a follow-up appointment, and then on Friday she was having some problems with the thing that originally hospitalized her for last week. So her doctor brought her in with a specialist on Friday. So she got out of the hospital on Thursday. On Friday, we had this problem come back up. So Kathy went and saw a specialist on Friday who said, okay, we're going to admit you to the hospital Sunday so you can have surgery on Monday. But if things get worse, come on in. So Saturday, everything was going fine. And, I don't know, sometime in the middle afternoon, Kathy was not feeling well. We started to do a podcast. Everything was going well yesterday, and she wasn't feeling 100%, but she was better than she was. We started a podcast, and a couple minutes into the podcast, she's like, I can't do it. So I said, okay, and we were talking about whether or not we should take her to the hospital yesterday or wait till Sunday. And she went into the living room, and I heard her call my name, and she had not fallen on the floor, but was on the floor because she was afraid she was going to pass out, and she didn't want to pass out and hit the floor. So I took her to the hospital Saturday late in the afternoon, which was just a disaster. One of the football games had just gotten out with the University of Miami, which caused traffic on the interstate to be basically a parking lot. We got Kathy to the emergency room where she's having the surgery, and she could not even get out of the car to be put in a wheelchair. So they had to actually come out to our car with a gurney and lift Kathy up on a gurney and wheel her in. And so she stayed the night. She is in the hospital right now and will be having surgery on Monday. So I will update you all as I have information. But she's going to be okay, but it's just she's got to have surgery for something, and it's been a rough week for our entire family, but mostly for Kathy. So that's why we have not been podcasting as much as we normally would. It's because of that. She's been in the hospital really with a week almost, except for that one day that she came home. So that's that. And I will keep you updated as we know things. So with all that on my mind, there are things going on in the news that we must discuss. And there was a story that came out over the weekend that I thought was really interesting. And it's what the title is of this podcast episode, that President Trump has picked his running mate. And there's an article that seems rather credible that has a truly outside of the box thought process on who President Trump's running mate will be. Listen to this. For months, Trump has repeatedly discussed choosing as his 2024 running mate Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, this is, like most things President Trump does, totally outside the box thinking. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm really scrambling here for someone that chose a member of the House of Representatives to be their running mate and be successful in their run. And it has not happened for a long time. Gerald Ford did not run with Richard Nixon. He was in the House, but remember, Spiro Agnew was forced to resign. And he was appointed to be the vice president. So that doesn't count. I mean, this is some real outside the box thinking, because I think most people have been thinking what I've been thinking, and that's Ron DeSantis. But it looks like Donald Trump thinks that's not the best choice. Listen to this. Donald Trump has repeatedly discussed choosing Georgia Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene as his 2024 running mate, says New York Times Magazine journalist Robert Draper. He told this to the Daily Beast. Speaking on this week's episode of the Daily Beast, the new abnormal podcast, Draper claimed discussions have been going on for months. He's the author of the book Weapons of Mass Delusion, When the Republican Party Lost Its Mind. I don't know anything about that book, but by the title, I imagine that's some liberal fantasy that we picked Donald Trump and we lost our minds, when in fact the opposite, complete opposite is the reality of that. Draper, the author of Weapons of Mass Delusion, When the Republican Party Lost Its Mind, told the podcast that Trump has toyed with the idea of selecting Marjorie Taylor Greene to join his ticket since February of this year. It's been discussed repeatedly, he said, per the Daily Beast. Draper said Marjorie Taylor Greene is being considered by Trump because she has been loyal. That's the main, I mean, that is true to him throughout. What is Trump most concerned about in a VP? Well, after his Mike Pence experience, he says loyalty. Wow. That's something. That's the thing, and a lot of people say, oh, that's crazy. What is there to gain? There's this old style of thinking that I don't think is relevant anymore at all. That a vice president, no one votes for vice president. They vote for president, right? That's true. But there's this old style thinking that used to be relevant, but I don't think is so relevant anymore. And that is, you pick a vice president when you're running for president because they'll help you carry a state or a voting bloc. Like Obama picked Biden, they would tell you, probably because of Biden's corruption really, but picked Biden because he could deliver organized labor, because he's supposedly a labor guy, although Biden has never labored in his life. And we got some big stuff coming up later on the program about Biden. Don't worry. Oh, man, something has happened that we're going to get to. But sometimes it'll say, oh, well, this person will help us carry a state or help us with this demo, like evangelical Christians or something. And I think there's been so much migration in the United States. Things are not nearly as regional as they used to be like that. But the MAGA movement as a whole is so unique and so different. And I think picking Marjorie Taylor Greene is a brilliant choice that I have never thought of. And I guess President Trump has decided that he needs Governor Ron DeSantis in place as the governor of Florida for whatever reason. And that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who probably, I would imagine she's pretty popular in Georgia. She's a rep from Georgia, but, congressional district is small when you're talking about a big state that size. But loyalty is something that we truly need. And that's a common theme with the Trump first term, his post first term, and of course the whole MAGA movement. And, I talk quite often on this program and on the radio that, never trust a never Trumper, right? We have a lot of these never Trumpers running around like Ben Shapiro and others. And I say, never trust a never Trumper. Now, sometimes they've come over and they're on our side now, and maybe they're helping us here, maybe they're helping us there, but you've always got to have your eye on them. But what President Trump has had, I think, the most trouble with, that is disloyal people. I mean, look, we're probably going to be coming into a Kevin McCarthy speakership in the House of Representatives, right? I mean, I want you to think about this now. We're going to have a red tsunami. It's going to be because of President Trump. The blue flush is right around the corner. But Kevin McCarthy, who it's been reported in multiple sources, and there's even been discussions that have leaked out that were phone discussions between Kevin McCarthy and Liz Cheney, that Kevin McCarthy raised his voice at President Trump on January 6th. There's been recordings released of these phone conversations with McCarthy and Liz Cheney talking about removing from office President Trump in the last couple weeks of his first term. He's an incredibly disloyal guy, and we're going to be stuck with this joker as our Speaker of the House. Why that is? Well, it's because there's a lot of other House members that are not loyal either, even though they may talk like MAGA. And, maybe if the Trump-endorsed candidacies of these House candidates around the country is so large, so successful, maybe we can relieve Kevin McCarthy of that speakership, but he plans on having it. And I've seen Steve Scalise on interviews say that he will vote for Kevin McCarthy as speaker. And because Steve Scalise was shot by that Bernie Sanders campaign worker, he's got a lot of juice. People listen to Steve Scalise. That was very disappointed. I was very disappointed to hear Steve Scalise talk so early. I heard him months ago talking about supporting Kevin McCarthy for the speakership. He's incredibly disloyal. In fact, just last week, Kevin McCarthy was on an interview and he was asked about impeachment proceedings against Joe Biden. And he says, no, we're not going to do that. So, yeah, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene not only has been incredibly loyal, like I know you have and I am to President Trump, but loyalty is probably what's most important to him moving forward in his second term. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, without question, is loyal. And I think she really, truly firms up the MAGA vote, too. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, when we have a Republican primary process, when Trump ran in his first term, how many ran again? Was it 15 Republicans we had running, including Trump? Or was it 16? It was around that number back in 2015. But when he ran again, he didn't have any primary opponents. Now, the rule of thumb is an incumbent typically does not have primary opponents. There are exceptions to this rule, but President Trump should not have a single primary opponent in 2024. And anyone who runs in the primary against him, put them in the disloyal column. So I think this choice that's being talked about of Marjorie Taylor Greene being his running mate, I think is not only a spectacular choice, an outside-the-box choice, I think it's a perfect choice. And I think she would be not just a working vice president, but I could see her using her role in the Senate as Vice President Marjorie Taylor Greene, president of the Senate, to really rally and whip like they have the whips in the House and the Senate, to whip the Republican senators and over in the other house, in the House of Representatives, on the Trump train as they should be and not being disloyal. You know, one of the biggest problems we have when we take back Congress, we have the two big problems we have all go back to loyalty, right? I talked about Kevin McCarthy. But look, Mitch McConnell plans on being the Republican leader, the majority leader in the Senate when the blue flush is completed. Do you trust Mitch McConnell to be loyal to Trump? Of course not. No one does. So we need someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her, what they say is a ceremonial position, but there's more to it than that because she's so vocal. She's got a personality type like Laura Loomer. She doesn't take any BS, and she could hold Mitch McConnell very much accountable if somehow he weasels through and gets that leadership position. I think he should be relieved of that responsibility myself. So no, I'm very excited about the possibility of President Trump choosing Marjorie Taylor Greene. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. You know, this movement is not a typical presidential run, this MAGA movement with President Trump. President Trump is draining the swamp, and there's a lot of swamps to be drained. And one of those swamps that we didn't focus in on so much in the first term was, of course, the Republican swamp, because the Republican swamp is worse than the liberal Democrat swamp, because the Republican swamp pretends to be MAGA, a lot of them. They pretend to be on our side when the opposite is, in fact, the truth. So let me know in the comments your thoughts on President Trump choosing Marjorie Taylor Greene. And, you know, it's an interesting thing because Marjorie Taylor Greene, would that mean that she would be our nominee in 2028? Because I've just assumed that whoever President Trump's vice president is in his second and non-consecutive term will be our nominee in 2028. That's why I was focusing so much on Ron DeSantis. He's my governor. He's great. He's perfect and all that. I met him last week at the DeSantis rally at our sponsor, Wings Plus in Coral Springs here in South Florida. And that was just an amazing experience. But what does that mean? Does that mean if Marjorie Taylor Greene is Trump's vice president, will she automatically get the nomination, or will we have a primary process where Ron DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and other MAGA conservatives are fighting for that Republican nomination? I don't want to get a party divided. They're doing a lot trying to get us divided now, like the Trump and the DeSantis camp. I call it, they're trying to get us to make Sophie's choice. There's no Trump and DeSantis camp. We're all MAGA. So, you know, I guess we can't get too far ahead in 2028, but I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a consideration that I had not considered. Did any of you actually think? Now, there's some negatives. Of course, they like to call her an anti-Semite, which she is not. She just, her and her husband are just getting divorced, and she has these very strange gym guy relationships with these weirdos from the gym. They look very strange. So, a Marjorie Taylor Greene run with President Trump, there's some things that they would be using against her, and that anti-Semitic line, that would never stop from the moment the announcement happened until, the whole first term. So those are some tough things that President Trump has to consider, and how would he deal with those, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a great choice. A lot of people may say Kari Lake, but by the time that run comes around, listen, the presidential campaign season is going to begin in 2023. She'll barely be governor a couple of months. It's too soon for Kari Lake. As great as we know she'll be, she needs to be governor for a while. So I think Kari Lake, just because of the time factor, not enough time as governor there, is on the list. I don't think that's in the cards. And there are other people that are possibly on a short list for Donald Trump. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, could you imagine her on the campaign trail doing interviews daily? Imagine her in a debate against whoever the Democrats put up in a vice presidential debate. It would be epic. It would be amazing. And it would be something that the left and the establishment would not be able to handle Marjorie Taylor Greene. It would be absolutely amazing. Remember, Kevin McCarthy took Marjorie Taylor Greene off some of her committees because Pelosi asked him. Are you kidding me? Imagine if Marjorie Taylor Greene were on the January 6th committee, how that would go. Now, listen, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, there's a lot more to talk about. I'm Brian Craig, sadly not joined by my wife and co-host today, but hopefully we'll be one day next week. We'll take our break. There's so much more to talk about. I've only just scratched the surface. Don't go anywhere.
Treat your skin to some pampering and grab the hottest beauty products from Blue Wave Cosmetics. Take a look at their wide selection of beauty and skincare products, including makeup brushes, eyeshadow palettes, lip glosses, and face masks. Give your special someone the gift of some TLC by sending them an e-gift card to Blue Wave Cosmetics. All U.S. residents receive fast, free shipping. Find them on Instagram at Blue Wave Cosmetics_official. BlueWaveCosmetics.com. Start shopping right now. Are you tired of being single? Do you see happy couples and wish you had a hand to hold? Does the idea of being in a relationship seem out of reach? If you answered yes to any of those questions, it's time for you to grab a copy of Say What You Mean from author John Beauvais, available on Amazon. There's a person out there that you deserve. You just have to find them. Say What You Mean is an instruction manual of the do's and don'ts that you need to know to change your status from single to in a relationship. You'll also find great tips that'll help you on all the dating apps. Stop wondering if you're going to find the right person and grab your copy of Say What You Mean from author John Beauvais, available in Kindle and paperback on Amazon. Want to know where all the bodies are buried? Author Robert Allen Miltenberg holds the key to that question in his book, Pool Boy to the Mob, Everybody Out of the Pool. Author Robert Allen Miltenberg holds the key to that question in his book, Pool Boy to the Mob. Welcome to Mob-Ammy Beach. This book is a fictionalized account of Miltenberg working at a mob-owned Miami Beach hotel in the 70s. If you're a fan of The Godfather, Goodfellas, or The Sopranos, you will love this story. It's full of colorful characters and wisecracking wise guys. It's a story with everything from Playboy bunnies and weaponized parrots to shattering the glass ceiling and getting away with murder, all in paradise. This is a wise guy tale you've never heard. Surrounded by pools, the trick for Bobby Moskowitz was not slipping in the one thicker than water. Bobby lived to tell the tales, and now you can read all about it. The funniest mob novel since Jimmy Breslin's The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. Pool Boy to the Mob, Everybody Out of the Pool, from author Robert Allen Miltenberg, available on Amazon. Order your copy right now.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Brian without my wife and co-host, Kathy. Oh, man, during the break, I was very, very busy, guys. During the break, it was longer than it was for you guys. I went to one of those IV places, and I just had an IV of 1,000 milliliters of I guess, saline for dehydration. It had B12 in it, a bunch of vitamins and stuff. And I feel great, I must say. I've been run so ragged the last week or so, and I have not been drinking anything, a little bit of coffee, not even my normal amount of coffee. So I was feeling very dehydrated today, and I feel spectacular now. And it's not a sponsor on the radio show, although they should be. I've never had that done before, except I did have to go to the hospital once, and I did get an IV, and I felt so great after, and I feel so good. I was just talking to Kathy on the phone in the hospital, and my daughter, and I said, I had this 1,000 milliliters, which I think is that a full liter? I think it is. It's not my strong suit, the conversions of math and everything, but I had it done about half an hour ago. I finished it, the whole 1,000 milliliters, and I've not gone to the bathroom, which means I could be wrong about this, but to me that means I was so dehydrated that my body just absorbed all of that and didn't get rid of it. All right, now let me get back to the news. There are 2 clips I'm going to play for you of Joe Biden just completely lost and checked out. And I'm playing these for a very specific reason. And I want to ask your thoughts on this. Here's the first one.
I have not made that formal decision, but it's my intention. My intention to run again. And we have time to make that decision.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President.
Dr. Biden thinks that, my wife thinks that we're doing something very important.
Okay, now that was one clip, and you heard the change in voice. He was a little energetic in the beginning about running again, is what he's talking about there. That's Capehart over on MSDNC, MS13BC. And he did a follow-up, and then Biden is totally checked out. He had forgotten what was asked of him. He didn't know where he was going, and he was just saying things about Jill just to fill up the time. He had forgotten what he had just said like 2 to 3 seconds before. Here's the next one.
One of the things you said you're for, Mr. President, is codifying Roe. You said you need 51 or 53 seats in the Senate in order to make that happen. But what happens if Republicans take control of Congress? How are you going to protect women?
Veto anything they do. They have to get for them to make Dobbs, for them to outlaw Roe, outlaw the right of a woman to make a choice with her doctor, to not make exceptions for rape and incest and et cetera, and pass it out of the Congress to make it the law of the land. The president has to sign it. I'll veto it.
Okay, now there, you could hear how down he is, his speech. Now, I'm not a doctor like Ronnie Jackson, so what I'm about to tell you is not a medical opinion because I don't have any medical background. But I do have life experience of being around people in my own family members. And also living in Florida, where we have the oldest population in America, you experience all kinds of things that people deal with in their elder years. And those 2 clips from over the weekend of Joe Biden, there's obviously been a major decline in his mental capabilities. And now this is just my opinion. This is not a medical opinion. If there's somebody in the audience who has a medical background that can speak on something like this from an educated viewpoint, I'm very much interested in hearing your thoughts. Leave a message in the comments of this episode. But to me, Joe Biden sounds like he's had a stroke. And that slurred speech, the slow down speech, the slow down thinking, that just sounds to me like he's had a mild stroke. And, I got to tell you something here. We're in total impeachment territory. Now, I don't know if having a stroke is something you can impeach a president for, because impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors. And there's high crimes and misdemeanors this guy's committed, that's for sure. But when it comes to the mental capacity of Biden, it is the job of the vice president of the United States to step in such times. And when we see Joe Biden in moments like this, we are seeing him at his best when they have him hop full of whatever it is that they give him. I have some suspicions on what that is. I'm not going to share it with you right here, but I do have a very strong suspicion about what they give him before pressers and interviews. You can speculate on that amongst yourselves. But Kamala Harris, is she not committing a high crime or misdemeanor impeachment level offense by allowing someone who is not mentally capable of fulfilling the duties of the office to remain in office without invoking the 25th Amendment or even making an attempt to invoke the 25th Amendment? I would say yes, she is. Yes, she is. And I don't think that is far-fetched at all. It's right before us. And what's going on with his mental capacity, it's not just about this country, it's about the world. Look at the lack of stability around this world. They're talking about nuclear war. Nuclear war is being discussed like it's a routine thing right now with Russia because of Ukraine. That's happening because of Biden being checked out. You can have a president that's stupid or incompetent, but we've never had one that was this checked out, not in the modern era. Not since America has been the leader of the world on every front, economic, militarily, and everything else. There is a nation now there's a world now without America in it, right? People have wondered, since the Second World War, people have wondered, what would the world be like without the United States? Would the world be able to stay together? And we're seeing that to a certain extent now. Kamala Harris has a legal, moral duty to step in and say, wait a minute, this is dangerous. This is not right. And I'm going to step in, and she's not doing it. So I believe she should be impeached, the vice president, for just that. Now, on Friday, this 4-month prison sentence that the Biden regime has handed down to Steve Bannon, because it's done through the Justice Department, Merrick Garland. So this is the Biden regime. Just disgusting. They've wanted this fantasy, and they've had a lot of success with it. All the president's men are in prison, right? It's amazing what's happened here. And Steve Bannon came out with an epic press conference after that 4-month sentencing and talked about how Merrick Garland was going to be impeached. Let me tell you, not only do we have a totally checked out president of the United States that is causing major global instability and financial instability, we have the most corrupt federal government we have ever lived in. We are living in a society where freedom of speech is no longer allowed. Look at what happened to Alex Jones. I don't agree with a lot of things Alex Jones says and does. But I do agree with Alex Jones, and I think many of you out there, that we have a First Amendment right in this country to say what's on our mind. And we don't have that right anymore. What's happened to Alex Jones is a textbook example of this. When the Obama regime put Dinesh D'Souza in prison for exposing them and the left and the Democrats, that was the first time that I have seen where we had in Dinesh D'Souza what really was a political prisoner. And if you go and watch his movie Hillary's America, which he should re-release with a new title, that movie Hillary's America is spectacular, but because of the title, people think, it's out of date. It's not out of date. And in that movie, he shows the prison they put him in. They didn't put him in white-collar prison. No, like Giselle Maxwell or these people. They put him in there with murderers, hoping probably that something would happen to him. It was a terrifying place that he went. And now Dinesh D'Souza was kind of like the test case. Now we have how many political prisoners with the J6ers and everything else, and the Steve Bannons going on? It's hard to even put a number on it, isn't it? But this is not the same country that it was 2 years ago. And you know what? It's getting worse. It's getting worse because they're losing power. And these midterm elections are going to be a big blow to them, even though it looks like Kevin McCarthy is going to play ball with them. But you look at what happened to Alex Jones. You look at what's happened to Steve Bannon and others. And you look at what they get away with. We are living in frightening times, people. Frightening times. And the only hope we have, the only thing that keeps us going is President Trump himself. Now, if you go to my YouTube channel, Brian Craig on YouTube, search Brian Craig or Brian Craig Show on YouTube, which you all should subscribe to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of great content up there. I live stream on the radio every day. Of course, I upload this podcast with Kathy on my YouTube channel, and I vlog. And over the weekend, I went to the Palm Beach International Airport where President Trump's private jet is parked. He flew it to the rally in Texas, but I saw it first. And this is the big jet, the 757 with the Rolls-Royce engines with his name Trump in gold on it. And it's just been remodeled inside and out and repainted. And I made it really a nice vlog, a nice video of that plane. I got to the airport and was shocked that I was there by myself. Now, later in the day, a lot of people showed up because later in the day, I was hearing from many people who went over there to see Trump Force One, and it was a beautiful sight. So please go to my YouTube channel and watch that video. I think you'll enjoy it, and I was so excited. It was the first time I've seen that plane, and I was more impressed by that plane than Air Force One, and it's parked in the same spot that Air Force One was parked in during President Trump's first term at the Palm Beach International Airport. But it's more impressive because it's just so pretty and it has his name on it. But go on my YouTube channel, Brian Craig, and check that out. And, you know, Donald Trump, he talked in the rally in Texas that he's the one that's got to fix this. Only Donald Trump can fix what is going on. And, you know, even at the end of his second term, he's going to make a lot of gains, but he's got a lot of enemies there that are working against all of us. And he very well may not even in his second term be able to fix everything and get everything back on track as it should be. But it's a major step in the right direction. And when we get our second MAGA president, whoever that is, they'll have more work to do. You know, this MAGA movement is something else. And, you know, this divide they're trying to get between DeSantis and Trump, you know, in any primary prior to Trump coming down the escalator, okay? If you look in past primaries when, you know, the party doesn't have the president, there's always a lot of people running, governors, senators, and things like this, vice presidents and such. And everybody picks someone, right? Everyone picks someone, and they're a Ted Cruz guy or this guy, or they're behind that guy. And what they're trying to do is get the political process back to that, like it's a sporting competition where everyone has their team in the form of the candidate. That is just not the way it is. We have one guy, his name's Trump. There are no other teams. If you're on one of the other teams, you're not with us, okay? We're in a whole different league than you're in, okay? This is not a time for primary opponents. This is not a game. Only Donald Trump and the MAGA movement can fix this. And President Trump, he is endorsing not just people that are running for governors and Senate and House seats. He is endorsing people at lower state levels, attorney generals, state houses and such, which is very unheard of for someone at his level. He is trying to bring the MAGA movement at all levels into our system, trying to take over the system. And even when we do that, there's still going to be a lot of resistance because we still have the donors and establishment people, but the bureaucracy, you know, thinks that it's their country and we're just living in it. But this is a process that is going to go on for decades and decades. What we're doing is taking this country back for the American people, right? Because right now we're run by special interests. We're run by donors. And special interests can be China buying off all these members of both houses of Congress or even a president in Biden's case, all right? So this MAGA movement is a strong movement. You've got to stick together. If you were watching that rally in Texas, did you see how excited the people got when Trump Force One flew over? And if you go back, when has anyone ever felt this that they have for Trump and Ron DeSantis. There was a little bit of it with George Bush when he went to ground zero and had the bullhorn with the firefighter, but that was a moment, and it was a short-lived moment. It wasn't the same. This movement is a movement that needs to be around for the next 100, 150 years to clean house of the bureaucracy. So it's so important that we don't fall out and get into these old things like, oh, well, I'm going to support this guy in the primary, but in the general election, we're all together. This is not the way it should be. H.W. Bush ran in the primaries in 1980 against Ronald Reagan, okay? And that term that you've heard so many times, voodoo economics, to describe Ronald Reagan's economic theory, which is capitalism, trickle-down economics. Voodoo economics came from George Bush, H.W. Bush, Bush 41, Bush 2, GW's dad. And look how that stuck. We don't want nor need any divisions. Like I was talking in the first segment about Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's all about loyalty. We've got to stick together through this. And we're sticking together with Trump and those that he endorses, those that he tells us to support. And that's the way it's got to be, people. And you cannot let yourself get distracted here or there. All right? Now, listen, I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. Thank you so much. Being a Patreon supporter does get you a lot of perks and benefits, like commercial-free editions of each and every podcast episode. Our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air shout-out on each and every episode. And of course, Kathy and I post things on our Patreon page, exclusive to Patreon supporters all the time. But it's more than that you get. I mean, you're supporting this program and all the content that I bring to you. And I put a lot of time and effort, as does Kathy, into the content that we bring you. The radio show, the podcast, my YouTube channel. I enjoy doing it all. I really do. And thank you all, our Patreon supporters, for your support that make all of this possible. Now, I want to thank our top Patreon supporters, of course. So the names you'll hear now are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, Gary, ETW, Chuck, D, Pamela, Rick, Nick, Wesley, Macho, and Rome, Wisconsin. Oh, man, thanks so much. If you would like to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description of this and every episode. But you can also find a link on my website, BrianCraigShow.com. BrianCraigShow.com, my all-new website that my daughter created for me. And you'll see a link to my Patreon page right there at BrianCraigShow.com. All right, we'll take our last break and be right back.
Meet the people who run the city. Do you ever wonder how or why shopping centers, parks, schools, even public transport are located where they are? What does it take to plan and run a city? Find out on the Planning Commission podcast. Join 3 practicing city planners with over 50 years of professional experience as they give you the scoop on the industry no one ever really talks about. Hear insider city planning stories full of tragedies, triumphs, and everything in between. Jam-packed with interesting expert opinions and some sprinkles of banter. They feature real stories from the planning professionals. It's a great podcast for anyone who wants to know more about the people who design the world around them. Add the Planning Commission podcast to your podcast playlist right now. Available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or subscribe to the YouTube channel for video episodes. The Planning Commission podcast. Start listening right now. Do you love the smell of a freshly baked batch of cookies? Fill your kitchen with delicious baked goods and pastries from RoyalQueensBaking.com. Baking is a fun pastime that brings the whole family together. Royal Queens Baking has every supply you need to create magical and yummy memories with your family and friends. Browse their vast inventory of the best natural organic-based baking products, from organic flours and sugars to ready-to-bake organic mixes. Royal Queens Baking is stocked with easy ways to enjoy home-baked goods with people you love. Head to RoyalQueensBaking.com and prepare for a treat. RoyalQueensBaking.com, supplying your every baking need. Hear that music? That means it's Christmas shopping season again. And when you're Christmas shopping, there's no better place to go than MyPillow.com. And with our promo code KANE at checkout, KANE, you will find the lowest prices ever on top MyPillow products. Right now, order your MyPillow My Slippers for $90 off in all sizes and colors for both men and women. The MyPillow that started it all is just $19.98. The 3-inch MyPillow mattress topper is 50% off. The MyPillow pet bed is 50% off too. There's also incredible savings on the 6-piece MyPillow towel set, the 100% Giza cotton dream sheets, the MyPillow bathrobes. Whatever special you see at MyPillow.com, you can take advantage of it with our promo code KANE, K-A-N-E, at checkout at MyPillow.com. You can also order over the phone, 1-800-716-4879. 1-800-716-4879. Promo code KANE, K-A-N-E.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. Brian Craig without my wife and co-host, Kathy. Okay, so on the enemies list that the establishment have, Kari Lake, of course, is very high on that list. And she's just got them completely panicked. I mean, she's tough like Trump. She's tough like DeSantis. And she's a good-looking woman. And their big fear with Kari Lake is like they had back in 2008 with Sarah Palin, that Kari Lake is going to lead women away from the Democrat Party. You know, women are about more than abortion. But the Democrats, you would think that's all women cared about was abortion. Now, let me tell you, a lot of guys will not own up to this, but in most families, this is how it is in our family, the wife handles the money. I mean, that's just it. I mean, you know, Kathy, here she is in the hospital. I cannot even pay our bills. I don't know how to do it. She does everything. It's on her computer. And women handle the family budgets. That's just the way it is. So this impact of inflation that's hit every household in this country, it's the women who understand more about how it's impacted families than the men, because women in most households do the shopping and all of that, right? Maybe some dated stereotype, but that's true. That's how it is. That's how it is. And women are about more than abortion. In fact, I don't think women are really about abortion. That's Democrats. They think that's all women care about. So Kari Lake, they're just completely panicked. And wait until Kari Lake wins and she starts doing some hardcore stuff on the southern border. Oh, my goodness. I mean, the meltdowns over Kari Lake have not even begun. The mainstream Washington media might relocate out west so they can follow Kari Lake. This is just like their worst nightmare. They don't understand. They've been going after Trump for years. Why does he still have such influence in these MAGA people? Why are they winning? They'll never understand it, okay? They'll never understand it. So anyway, CNN, they had S.E. Cupp on to trash Kari Lake. I'm going to play you a clip here, which we'll play in a moment, and then we'll talk about it. Now, S.E. Cupp was discovered by Glenn Beck. She's been on CNN for many, many years, S.E. Cupp. And I remember I was listening to Glenn Beck's radio show when he introduced S.E. Cupp to the audience. And it was so bizarre. He read off what sounded like either a casting sheet or he was introducing a bachelorette on the dating game back in the 70s. He went through this thing. She hunts. She fishes. She's a member of the NRA, guys. S.E. Cupp, you know. That's actually what he said. I'm not kidding. I'm not being sarcastic. And she paraded herself around a while as a conservative person. Now she's over there as one of these useful idiots, fake Republicans over on CNN. And I'm not a big fan of S.E. Cupp, not just because she's a fake Republican. She's kind of like Anna Navarro, right, is on The View. But I heard her say she's an atheist, and atheists I don't like atheists. I don't like to be around atheists. Atheists creep me out. I just feel creepy around atheists. Maybe that's weird to you, but to me, I just don't like atheists at all. And, these cable news networks, CNN, MSNBC, they do the same thing on The View. They have these token conservatives that come out and hate everything Republican, right? And that's what SE Cup is over on CNN. So anyway, they're talking about Kari Lake, and Kari Lake had made a comment about Martin Luther King being a Republican, which was true. I'll talk more about that as it goes on. But let me play this exchange. So it's CNN. They got SE Cup here, who's speechless. Speechless. Listen.
If MLK, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, if JFK were alive today, if our founding fathers were alive today, they would be America First Republicans.
I mean, I guess I don't need to ask for your reaction because you're laughing through it. What do you think?
You can say anything and not back it up. You can claim these icons of the left as the new leaders of the far right. I guess just because. But I don't even want to waste time trying to dissect how dumb that is. It's about as dumb as the idea in MAGA world that JFK Jr. is coming back from the dead to run with Donald Trump in 2024.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
SE Cup, always good to have you on for your...
Okay, yeah. Can you imagine they pay her. They pay her as a pundit to come on television with that kind of deep analysis of the issues. I mean, she was completely speechless there. Well, let me tell you a couple things. I don't know about John F. Kennedy being a Republican today. I think he would be very upset about the overturning of Roe v. Wade because when you carry on like President Kennedy did, that's an option guys like that like to have around. But there's a book about President Kennedy that you all should read. It's an amazing biography, and I know there have been a million biographies written about President Kennedy, but it's called An Unfinished Life. I bought this book. It's an incredible biography of President Kennedy. It goes through his whole life and his naval career and everything else. And it was absolutely an amazing, amazing life. I mean, he actually worked his way up, believe it or not, being a spoiled rich kid with a gold platinum spoon in his mouth. He still did a lot of working very hard, suffering with his pain. Even when he was in the Navy, before the PT-109 incident, he suffered with tremendous amounts of pain. And he still fought through with it. But he was conservative on some things. I know everyone knows he was a lifelong member of the NRA. He supported lower taxes. He was also against the unionization of the federal workforce. He was critical of that. But who knows? These guys would have been corrupted, like the rest of his family. The rest of his family are Democrats today. He'd probably be a Democrat today. But what she means when she says that, Kari Lake, is that by today's standards, John F. Kennedy was a Republican, and there's no doubt about that. By today's standards, their party has changed. It's been taken over by radical communists. I mean, that's just the way it is. He was an anti-communist guy, and it's been taken over by communists. And I think that's what she's referencing. Now, so far as Martin Luther King was a Republican. He switched in 1960, and there was a story about that, which I'll tell you very briefly. I believe it was in Georgia. I could be wrong about the state, but I think it was in Georgia. During the 1960 campaign, so I don't know, was this 59 or 60? It was either 59 or 60 when this happened. And it's hard to find information on this because, well, the mainstream, they don't want you to know about this. And all of the histories are written by liberal college history professors, so they don't write about what I'm about to tell you. But it was either 59 or 60. The presidential campaign was going on. And President Kennedy was running for president, as was Vice President Richard Nixon, who was Eisenhower's vice president. And a Democrat sheriff, I believe in Georgia, arrested in the middle of the night Martin Luther King. Okay, Martin Luther King was well known, but he still wasn't as huge as he went on to be. But he was still a well-known person and nationally known. And this Democrat sheriff, arrested Martin Luther King and took him out to the county jail out in the middle of nowhere. And you got to understand, 5960, no cell phones, no social media, no one knows what's going on. And Martin Luther King's wife was afraid that they were going to lynch Martin Luther King, this sheriff. And she put calls through to both President Kennedy, who was a senator then, and Richard Nixon. And she first, and she was, she got a hold of Bobby Kennedy, and she got a hold of Vice President Nixon, and she was begging and pleading with them to get Martin Luther King out of this jail because they were going to lynch him. In fact, she got a hold of Nixon, but she didn't get a hold of Bobby Kennedy. She got a hold of a senior aide to President Kennedy. I can't remember his name. If someone knows, let me know in the comments. It's been a long time since I've thought about this. So anyway, she begged both Nixon and this aide with President Kennedy, then Senator Kennedy, to get this sheriff in Georgia to release Martin Luther King because they were going to lynch him. Well, the sheriff was a Democrat. He had no interest in what Richard Nixon, a Republican, had to say, and he had no juice. This aide, after he got off the phone with Martin Luther King's wife, went to the hotel where President Kennedy was and told Kennedy what happened. Bobby Kennedy had a meltdown and said, no, you can't get involved in this. We're going to lose the Southern vote if you do this. But President Kennedy, he overruled Bobby, and he got the sheriff on the phone. And because they were both Democrats, Senator Kennedy, John Kennedy, and the sheriff that was going to lynch Martin Luther King, he did it. The racist Democrat sheriff let Martin Luther King go. Because Bobby Kennedy, who was opposed to it, and President Kennedy, got a hold of him. They got him to do it, but they made a deal with Martin Luther King. Okay, they made a deal that if they got him out of the jail, he would come out of the jail and endorse Senator Kennedy for president in 1960. And if you can find the video of this, they didn't have video then, that's how long ago it was. I've seen this press conference, and it's unlike any other press conference you've ever seen with Martin Luther King. He comes out of the jail, the press are waiting, and he comes and thanks and endorses President Kennedy. And it's a hostage video. Martin Luther King looked terrified. He looked terrified. So, and he was a Republican until that very moment when he made this deal with the Kennedys to save his life by endorsing Senator Kennedy for president and becoming a Democrat. That's how Martin Luther King became a Democrat. He was a Republican his whole life, as was his entire family. And remember, Martin Luther King was always working against Democrats. The Democrats were the Jim Crow segregations, et cetera, et cetera. And that little story I told is worthy of a movie, don't you think? It's an untold story, and it's an amazing story, and it's much more detailed than what I shared, but that's just off the top of my head. So anyway, no, Kari Lake is spot on, right on the money, but CNN and SC Cup, they're stupid people. They don't know any of what I just shared with you. But no, Kari Lake is a very smart, educated woman. She knows more about what's going on in the world than any of these cable news anchors and reporters and pundits, because she not only is she educated and been in news her whole life, she's in the real world. She lives in reality, not in some ivy tower in the DC Beltway or going to the Hamptons on the weekends and all this stuff. She lives in the real world and knows more about what goes on in this world than the media that are based in Washington and New York City among the elite. So, and you can tell SC Cup just despises Kari Lake. She's jealous of Kari Lake because Kari Lake, unlike SC Cup, is a real woman. Now, oh boy, someone else just murdered, pushed in front of a subway. And the mayor of New York, listen to this, Butte. He goes on, he does an interview on the local news in New York. Good Day New York, that's New York City. Good Day New York, it's the local news morning show in New York City. Listen to this.
I rode the subway yesterday, and it's the same thing. I haven't put my AirPods in for over a year because I feel like I need to be very much aware. That's quality of life issue.
You were right about, not having your iPods in, not focusing on phone. And I say yes to that. I do the same. And we put out a video and information telling people about being aware of what's around them and what's taking place. And I encourage New Yorkers to do that.
Okay, so there you have Eric Adams telling people. By the way, he puts iPads in his ears. But anyway, here he is, the mayor of New York City, telling people to put their mobile devices away, put their earbuds away, their AirPods away, put their phones away, and then, to help solve crime and stop it from happening. How about this, Mayor Adams? How about putting the criminals away? Does it even occur to him to put the criminals away? And if they would put the criminals away in New York City, maybe there wouldn't be so much crime. The Democrats for a long time have been soft on criminals. But when did they start becoming advocates for the criminals? That's a whole new thing. There's always been an isolated lunatic Democrat that was soft on crime or, unfair sentencing guidelines. But now, like with many things, the Democrats put the wrong people first. Like at the southern border, they put foreigners ahead of Americans, right? And here in New York, they're putting criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens that are just living their lives. This is a strange new world. Okay, now there's a story in the Gateway Pundit today about the D.C. Metro cop from January 6th that has all the neck tats that you see on CNN. You know who I'm talking about? Listen to this. This is in the Gateway Pundit today. The former D.C. police officer at the Capitol on January 6th was once involved in a race-related lawsuit involving the legal counsel for Howard University, Michael Maddox. The cop, former cop, and now CNN contributor, and his partner confronted Maddox from Howard University, pushed him against a dumpster, and conducted a search on him. When Maddox asked what was wrong, he responded by saying it was a high-crime area. Maddox was paid $175,000 by the city, D.C., in a settlement. And it was tweeted out this. Listen to this. In 2014, the city of D.C. settled a lawsuit filed by a black man who accused two D.C. cops of violating his civil rights related to an unwarranted search and seizure. And that's where this came from. Now, I've been telling you guys that for quite some time, no one in the press has even asked this question, and I'm sure they're very aware of it. He's covered in tattoos on his neck. I don't know how you become a police officer when you have all these prison tats. I mean, I don't know. But one of his neck tattoos is a blackout tattoo, right? It's a big tattooed, like rectangle area, and a blackout tattoo, meaning that it's a tattoo that is there to cover up something that he doesn't want people to see. What is the tattoo that he covered up with the blackout tattoo? Is it some old girlfriend's name? Is it something racist? It's pretty bad. Whatever he had blacked out is something so bad he doesn't want anyone to see it. And I've suspected it was something that was racist, because typically guys that get tattoos that they have blacked out, the tattoo that they're having blacked out is a racist tattoo. And they black it out like that because they don't want people to see it, whatever that is. Swastika, I don't know. And not one person has asked this guy, what is the tattoo that he blacked out, and go back and find photographs of him back in those days so they could verify that he told them the truth, or even call him out for this offensive tattoo. And I have thought it was a racist tattoo. Now we get this story, and it even further strengthens that, doesn't it? Yeah, it sure does. Hey, listen, if you're interested in advertising on the podcast, go to my website, briancraigshow.com. You can send an email through my website, briancraigshow.com. If there's something you would like to advertise, a business, maybe you have a brand you want to make some arrangements for me to promote. Maybe you have a book, a website, a podcast. If there's something that you would like to promote, get in touch with me through my website, briancraigshow.com. That includes brand deals if you're with a company. Just go to briancraigshow.com, send me an email there, and we'll get back to you on that, okay? And it'd be greatly appreciated. And make sure that when you contact us that you tell us what it is you're looking to advertise, okay? And if there's any links or anything, please send those too. It'll make the process go a little smoother, where we can take a look and see if it's a good fit for the audience. But if you are listening and you have something you want to advertise, I'm sure it's probably a good fit, because you who have that product, that service, that company, that business, that book, that podcast, you're listening to this program. So you can reach out to us. Just go to briancraigshow.com and email me through there. Well, listen, everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name's Brian Craig, sadly not with my wife and co-host Kathy. I really hope that she's back with us here on the podcast later this week. and home with us long before that. Kathy's really been having a tough time. She's pretty worn down because of all these health issues that she's having. And thank you, everyone who's contacted both of us that have kept her in your prayers. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time.
Psychological fiction and horror fans, you won't want to miss the haunting stories from the book Sun, Moon, and Three Less Stars from author Khalees, available on Amazon. Sun, Moon, and Three Less Stars features 3 short thriller stories in a screenplay graphic novel format. Experience the thrill in an exciting new way by reading and seeing the stories unfold. Your eyes will be glued to the page. Head to Amazon right now and order your copy of Sun, Moon, and Three Less Stars by author Khalees.